what are the different activities you're going to do with them. All right, we'll go step by step, give you an example of the kind of activities they like, and then give you examples on how you can keep your dog engaged while they are alone. All right, okay, if you have a chewer in the house, great. What I would do is give them things to do with keeps their jaws busy. Raw hide perhaps is an idea, a solution, but don't give it to them while they're left alone first. I want you to supervise your dog when you first give them the bones. How are they? Are they sort of swallowing the bones whole? Are they getting very protective about their bones? Or are they the kinds who are not interested? They'll chew for some time. They're like, hey, what? I don't want this bone. I'd rather go chew on my tug rope perhaps. So first supervise them and see if they're the kind who like to chew on things. Give them a raw hide and give them something when you are first around them. If you feel your dog is going to be safe and really it's not going to swallow something whole or kind of damage their jaws, then you could leave them with that when you get out of the house. Okay. Then another option is for you to give your dogs kongs. Now, I don't know if you've used kongs before. Kongs are these rubber sort of funicular toys. They are food dispensing toys that have holes on either ends. I am not asking you to use those bone-like kongs or any such, but those are funicular kongs that you could fill with little amounts of treat or like a mashed banana, or, pieces of apple or some such. Smear it with a little, dog peanut butter, curd or ghee or coconut oil or whatever it is, and freeze that. Okay, freeze that and then give that to your dog after a couple of hours, because that requires a little more patience for your dogs. So if you've noticed your dogs like to gnaw on things, give them a frozen Kong, because what do they have to do? They have to gnaw at it. Then suddenly it's like, ooh, this is cold. I'll play with it for a bit. I'll wait for it to thaw. Then I'll lick it. So you're giving your dog an activity. You're teaching your dog, wait, buddy. Food just doesn't come magically out of this Kong. You have to lick. You have to wait. You have to sort of play with it for the food to start coming out. The food is also frozen in the process, right? So your dog's going to get the treat and it's going to like gnaw, chew at it, make it smaller, warm it up, and then eat it. So the chewers generally do well with raw hides. They do well with frozen Kongs that are filled with, either treats or food. So you could always try these activities if you have chewers around. Now, what if you have rippers or shredders, right? Most of my dogs have been one of these, right? They love to tear things apart or rip them apart or basically destroy something that comes in the game. So what I would do was, rather than using my cushions as your targets, I will give you things for you to rip apart. So what are those things? Well, I would normally give them these tiny little cardboard boxes. I mean, we're all ordering from these e-commerce sites. So most of us would have these cardboard boxes lying around, but use those cardboard boxes, have layers of newspapers, have some treats hidden in there, and leave that with your dog. So your dog's job is to remove all those layers of newspaper, smell it, pick up those treats, and then what? It doesn't end there. I have a whole cardboard box waiting to be ripped apart. Fantastic. I'm going to rip them now. Right? So they've had a treat, they've had newspapers, and now they're ripping apart cardboard boxes. Great, man. Go for it. Again, make sure your dog doesn't ingest too much cardboard. If that is the sort of dog you have, stay away from this kind of activity. You could probably just give them like the Kongs, or you could give them their regular good old rope toys, smear a little amount of treats or some, like peanut butter or something on them, and then give that rope toy to them, because then they're licking and ripping and licking and ripping. So you get the idea, right? Keep their jaws engaged. Another thing is, if they don't ingest cloth, like whole pieces of cloth, because that is a quick vet visit for you. If they don't do that, I would say play the towel game. And it's any old pajamas or towels that you have. You must have seen them, a lot, videos or such. But I generally lay out the pajama or the towel. I sprinkle a few treats in 3 or 4 places along the towel. I tie knots wherever the treats are. So the treats are hidden inside knots. And then I would just give that to my dog and walk away. And that requires my dog to sort of untie the knot or rip that cloth out for them to get the treats. So this again requires a lot of ripping and shredding kind of activities. Again, big disclaimer, your dog should not be the kind who will ingest pieces of cloth, right? Because that is dangerous. Thread is okay, cloth not so much. Okay. Now, third thing, and if anyone's in South India or you have access to coconuts, give them the whole darn dry coconut. I mean, with the husk. Okay. See, I'm a proper South Indian girl. I use a lot of coconut in my cooking. But my dogs have my best friends for this. I give them 2 coconuts every week, saying, go for it, buddies. And they get the whole coconut, they rip the husk apart, they nicely, tear up the husk, and they just give me a shell. Like, great, thank you. And I take the shell and my work is done. I'm taking that coconut away. But that whole experience of ripping that, right? And they go for it with a vengeance. But once they've ripped, they are the most tired, happiest dogs, 0 misbehaviors from them after. So if you have these kinds of rippers and shredders, think of ideas or ways. These are just a few examples to allow them to vent that energy or the frustration out when they're bored. Okay. Then there are the tuggers. Now, I'll give you an example. My previous dog that I had, he was a pit bull and he loved to tug. And boy, did he have a lockjaw. Once there was a rope in his mouth, it was impossible for me to tug it out. So he enjoyed it. What did I do when I would leave him alone? I would tie this tug rope to one of my door handles, and sometimes we even had bedposts that we would tie this rope to, and he would pretty much spend a good 10 minutes. When he'd get frustrated, he'd walk into the room and he would tug and tug and tug because he wanted that darn tug rope, and he would tug for a good amount of time and then he would sleep. He's like, I'm done. And then he would sleep for a couple of hours, then wake up again and go for it again, right? You could tie it to door handles. If you're planning to leave your dogs outside, then tie those, big old jute ropes you get or any such thing to probably a trunk of a tree or a low-hanging branch or some such, where they will get an opportunity to tug. Another option is you have these plastic bottles, right? You get those Bisleri or any of those soda bottles, pierce a hole through them in the middle, fill the bottle up with treats just below the hole. So if this is the length of your bottle, you have a hole here. Up to this much is how much I fill treats, right? And I leave that tied to a door handle. So whenever my dog kind of pushes the bottle, it kind of tilts and a few treats fall out of those holes, right? And then these dogs are like, just hitting it is not enough. I want the plastic bottle in my mouth and I want to eat all those treats. So then they start tugging. You introduce a game of tug. So this is another activity for you to consider, all right, while you have tuggers at home. Now, there are other of these things you get nowadays, which are these suction cups. These are cups that sort of get stuck on a floor. They get sucked on to, vacuum between the cup and the floor. And these dogs have a rope or some such tied to the other end. Their job is to tug and tug and tug. Better suited for smaller sized dogs. If you do that with like a pit bull or a rottie, they're not going to do it. They're going to just pluck it out in 2 seconds and not worth it. But if you have a tinier breed like a Shih Tzu or a Spaniel or some such, then that is a good exercise for you. Your dogs are tugging and trying to get that rope out of the ground. That's a good exercise for them. Again, if they enjoy tugging. Right? So these are activities for you to think about. The other kind is for you to look at sniffers. Now, these are the guys, beagles, best examples. Love to sniff. Corgis, love to do that. So what do? Hide a few treats around that place where you're leaving them. If you're leaving them in the entire house, then maybe all the corners that you can get your hands on, leave a few treats. So your dog's job is to sniff and sniff and sniff and sniff. And sniffing is fantastic exercise for the dogs. They're just going to they collapse after saying, I'm just exhausted. I'll wait for this person to come back home. Until then, I'm going to catch a quick snooze. So these are different activities for you to do in your house. Now, don't just restrict yourselves to just these, right? You may have a combination of a tugger and a sniffer at home. Great. You have many options to choose from. Maybe you will try all of them when you leave your dog alone. You could have just somebody who loves to chew. Fantastic. Then you just leave them with a raw bone or some such and go out. But it really depends on what your dog enjoys doing, and figure that out, and then figure out what are these things you will let your dog do when they are alone. Okay. If you have a dog with anxiety or you're just training your dogs to get over the anxiety, these are great ways for you to consider to keep your dogs engaged while you are alone or while they are alone. Okay. So remember, if you have a sniffer in the house and you have left them with like a towel game, they're going to lose interest. Like, I'm not going to do that. They'll probably sniff and sniff and sniff. That towel that you've left there, but they really won't go after it and rip it. Unmet needs, okay? They require a different kind of exercise. So build your activities around the exercise they enjoy, all right? These entire things you can do, but please, like I said earlier, you are not skimping on exercise outside the house. So anything you normally do, like a walk or a game of fetch or a game of tug, you will not stop doing that. Just because you figured out these activities doesn't mean you stop that, right?